Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Bundesliga show brought to you by Over the Bar. We are back after long delays of international football wilderness to talk about Bundesliga footy once again. So, we shall be reviewing match week 26 of the Bundesliga. We will be talking through the big managerial changes. Bayern also apparently changed their manager, as well as Pokal updates as we go along.
Rory, they did what?
Well, the big news was that Stuttgart have changed their head coach.
I've heard of this. What?
So yeah, it wasn't a very quiet international break, gents. Before we get into it, of course, all the usual little bits of lovely admin just to get us going. So please do smash a like on the video. Always helps in terms of performance on YouTube. So thumbs up would be fantastic. Please do make sure that you comment whilst the show is live, your thoughts on managerial changes, Pokal, and what we've seen, of course, in the Bundesliga in the recent match week. And, of course, press that red button to subscribe to the channel. We're in partnership with Bundesliga Boxes, fantastic company that provide authentic German T-shirts from all the way through the Bundesliga, all the way down to Regional Liga. And, of course, we're in partnership with Bully News, who are a fantastic English speaking or language website that covers the Bundesliga from long reads to short reads, fantasy football, featured articles, everything else in between. So, gents, before we get into Matchday 26 review, of course, we're going to talk Derek Klassiker and everything else that's gone on from a relegation race point of view. Let's talk about what happened during the international break, which obviously caught a few people cold to an extent, but there was lots of leaks going on throughout the evening, which feels like an eternity ago now, that Nagelsmann's departure was imminent and that Thomas Tuchel would be coming in very quickly afterwards. Lo and behold, sources eventually got concrete news of this, that Nagelsmann was going to be let go, and obviously, lo and behold, it has happened. Nagelsmann's left the club. Tuchel has come in. Obviously, we've seen Tuchel win his first game, a very important one in the Klassiker against Dortmund. But let's just cover the Nagelsmann side of it to start with, shall we? And I guess before we get into all the things that were going on in the background, from a purely footballing element, Mark, do you think this was the right decision? Then we'll go on to Peter, can weigh in whether he thinks it was yes or no.
Yeah, now I know a lot of people, including Bayern fans, are not happy about the decision, but I actually think if Bayern Munich want to win the title and the Champions League, I think it was the right decision, actually. And a lot of people are going to disagree with me on that because I know that Julian Nagelsmann has a lot of fans in Germany, in the world. He's a highly rated manager, and for good reason as well, because he is a good manager. But for me, Bayern Munich, since he took over, have not really reached the heights of what they previously did, especially under Hansi Flick and previously Jupp Heynckes as well, because I just don't think, the results weren't good enough at times this season. As you can see from the table, 10 games that they failed to win this season, including defeats against the likes of Augsburg, Leverkusen, where they were outplayed. The Champions League form's been good this season, but let's be honest, they got schooled against Villarreal last year in the last day, which wasn't good enough at the end of the day for Bayern Munich. And I just think at times in the biggest games, they haven't been, not even always in the biggest games, sometimes against some of the mid-table teams, as I mentioned, they've been out-bullied. And I just think tactically, he's made some strange decisions. Even the likes of Joao Cancelo, he was brilliant in the first two games. Where was he after that? Do you know what I mean? Brilliant in the first two games, all of a sudden gets dropped against Paris Saint-Germain. I know Coman has done pretty well at fullback, but for me, it should be Joao Cancelo playing right fullback. But that's just one example of a number, really. His failure to replace Lewandowski, and they've ended up with Choupo-Moting, which isn't only his fault. Let's be honest, a lot of that is to do with the sporting director and things like that. But this is all part of the partnership in Germany. The sporting director and the trainer, it's all kind of coming together. And for me, it just didn't. It's not been a disaster. He got his first major trophy. He won the Bundesliga title. But let's be honest. You know, they got battered against Gladbach last year as well in the cup. The Champions League was a disappointment, and this year, like for me, before this weekend, they were not looking likely to win the Bundesliga title for the first time in 11 years. So, you know, for me, it is the right decision. If they want to beat Manchester City in the Champions League, which has got to be the goal, they had to do it. And it's hard. Yes, it's very hard. But for me, long term, it's the right decision to get a very, very good coach in Thomas Tuchel in as well.
I mean, if it helps your answer, Peter, they're now 1-0 up against Freiburg.
I have the match on. I'm keeping a close eye on it.
Yes, indeed.
Because, there's not much we can say about the Thomas Tuchel regime just yet. I mean, we've only seen one match in which he returned the team to a 4-2-3-1. The Hansi Flick self-coached 4-2-3-1. That's what this move was really about. Was getting Bayern back to being a self-coached side. Nagelsmann is a tactical tinkerer, a very, very young trainer. He was only 33 years of age when he took over one of the biggest football clubs in the world. Lesson number one, of course, about this is if you work for Bayern, don't go on a skiing holiday. It's the horrible things will happen. There are some sources that suggest that had Nagelsmann not gone on this skiing holiday, had he actually remained with the club following the loss to Leverkusen in the previous round, they would not have terminated him. They were a little bit pissed off that he went on this vacation. Of course, the opportunity arose to bring Tuchel in, and Bayern had missed out on Tuchel before, prior to him going to PSG, and they didn't want to do this again. It was Mickey Beisenherz, the great German football commentator, social commentator, works for Radio Berlin-Brandenburg, and also has his own great podcast, who I believe likened the Bayern move to a Robbie Williams song of some sort. You know, I love you, baby, but it's Madonna. So they had this opportunity. They took this opportunity. Rune and I were just settling in for a nice, quiet little weekend there on Bully News on Thursday evening when the leaks started coming out. And I mean, all day Friday I was working on a piece for Bully News in which I translated all of the major editorial articles in Germany's papers of record, be it the Süddeutsche Zeitung, the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, Die Zeit, Spiegel Online, all of this stuff. And the headline that I came up with based on, all of these editorials was people believed that Nagelsmann was erratic, moody, and overly complicated, which is something you could say about me on a bad day too. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we're not. You can say that about any man on a bad day. Probably your girlfriends do. So basically, too much tactical tinkering, particularly the back three. We talked about it in our last show. I mean, that the brazen set of tactics that he came up with, this was meant to end the game early. And, sort of giving Cancelo starts not based on merit or performance, but wanting to rotate the players, rotate them too much. Of course, Cancelo is on the pitch now. He is the only change that Thomas Tuchel made. He replaced Davies, who was probably the only Bayern player who had a shaky game against Dortmund. But that's what they're doing. They're trying to get Bayern back to a simple, self-coached team the way that they were in the 6th trophy year under Hansi Flick. And that's the idea. Whether or not it's going to work and it's going to succeed, they're looking pretty good against Freiburg here, so that should leave them in the cup. They face Freiburg again this weekend. Then we'll find out some very, very interesting things. I don't see them winning the Champions League under any trainer, to be honest with you. They're not going to beat Man City, in my personal opinion. So Nagelsmann had a 1-trophy year last year. And I think with Tuchel, they will consider a 2-trophy year to be a progress. I mean, okay, you could count the Super Cup, but it's, basically you're expected to at least do the double with Bayern. One trophy a year is never sufficient for the German giants, for the mighty Bavarians.
Yeah, well, yeah, there was lots of unrest, wasn't there, outside the football element of things. But at the same time, they paid through the nose to RB Leipzig to get this man into the role, 25 million euros or 21-ish million pounds. A lot of money.
More than that. Yeah, but they of course he didn't hit the performance incentives, so they're not. Yeah.
But again, a man who was also described as the perfect fit by Chairman Herbert Heine. Just seeing actually that Freiburg have equalised. I might have just spoiled that for you, Peter. Apologies. So 1-1 it seems in the Pokal. Good game coming out there. But anyway, it's obviously soured very quickly, and they've gone for Tuchel, who had moved to Munich, 2 weeks ago, or roughly speaking. But so is this a move that Bayern had been looking at for a little while? Obviously, you mentioned, Peter, already that they missed out on him previously. The opportunity arose, and they were scared. Bayern were worried that Tuchel would go elsewhere. Obviously, Madrid had been mentioned as well. So
they'll return to PSG as well. Yeah. No, they saw their opportunity and they took it. And that's what we're hearing. That's what we're getting from all of the German football insiders, is that this was kind of a spontaneous, impromptu decision. Herbert Heine backed Julian Nagelsmann on Monday, and contact with Tuchel was initiated on Tuesday. Tuchel himself has admitted that he was surprised. Nagelsmann, there's this whole war of words between Oliver Kahn and Lothar Matthäus that we've been forced to kind of report upon, because people like this sort of gossipy stuff. But it's basically Matthäus is claiming that they didn't even call Nagelsmann to inform him that he was being let go.
Yeah,
which is, and Kahn claims, well, I didn't want to do it over the phone, and things like. Basically, they weren't going to sack him until they got Tuchel's commitment. So they initially contacted Tuchel on Tuesday. They set up the contract negotiations on Wednesday. The leaks started coming out on Thursday, and that's how Nagelsmann found out that he was getting sacked.
Yeah,
this was not what we expected, really, many German football fans. I mean, when Nagelsmann moved from Leipzig to Bayern, I was thinking to myself, 10th, 11th, 12th title, easy. And then Nagelsmann goes on to the Premiership, which he may do yet. I think would probably be a mistake at this point in his career. I hope he doesn't take the Chelsea job, but that's not a very stable job.
Just 3 months max there, I think.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, this was surprising. I thought that when he was unveiled, given the amount of money that he cost, I thought that he was going to be embedded in there for some years to come. And even though this season was disappointing in some respects, I think that they were going to roll with him until the end of the season at the very least. But the opportunity presented itself, and they said, Hasan Salihamidzic and Oliver Kahn got together and said, okay, it's now or never. We love our guy, but it's Madonna. I don't know that Robbie Williams song.
Yeah, I mean, well, we dwelled upon it. No, we needed to talk about it, but let's talk about the even bigger news. That's and no, but from a serious point of view, obviously Stuttgart, who are of the Bundesliga, decided to part ways with fireman Labadia, or fire starter Labadia, who has not made a tremendous impact on this occasion in a second spell with the club. He's overseen one solitary win out of his 11 Bundesliga games, taking us from an almighty 16th place to 18th in that stretch of time. 5 points from safety with 8 games to go. So that was enough for the powers that be to get rid and bring in Sebastian Hoeneß, who, of course, formerly of, well, the second team at Bayern and most recently Hoffenheim, saw them to mid-table finishes. And yeah, we've been talking off air about this. Again, I'll fire this one straight over to Mark because I know we've had our jokes about this in previous seasons about Seb Hoeneß, and but it doesn't immediately fill me with confidence. Mark, from a more standoff point of view, are you impressed or not so impressed with that appointment?
Yeah, to be honest, I was quite worried about tomorrow's game against Stuttgart for FC Nuremberg until that appointment. But now I'm feeling a bit more confident, to be honest. FC Nuremberg could turn them over, yeah. But no, in all seriousness, I mean, obviously we've expressed our doubt about him when he was Hoffenheim manager. For me, he started the decline really for Hoffenheim. You know, a side that were always top 7, top 8. He had them down and, you know, I think he finished 10th and 12th in his 2 seasons there, which on paper isn't terrible, but it was considering where Hoffenheim had come from, you know, which was a kind of, under Nagelsmann, they were qualifying for the Champions League. They were a top side in Germany. And now you see what's happened this season, obviously, where it's just been a disaster until the last couple of games. For me, it's not a particularly inspiring signing, I'm going to be honest, but it's no less inspiring than what Labbadia was when he was appointed in January, because if I'm being honest, I didn't think that was particularly inspiring. He's also a bit of a journeyman in Germany too, isn't he, really? You know, he's had a few jobs, most of them he hadn't done particularly well. I mean, I can honestly say I was there for Labbadia's only win as Stuttgart coach as well. So, yeah, when they beat Köln 3-0. So I saw his one and only good day at the club. But, yeah, for me, it's very worrying times. I think the fact that the number of managers that supposedly turned down Stuttgart as well tells you the size of the problem at the VfB at the moment as well, because I think they did try to procure some better managers, the likes of Adi Hütter and people like that, were supposedly turned them down, which I can understand, to be honest with you. The likes of Adi Hütter will expect to be a minimum a mid-table Bundesliga side. But yeah, I mean, for me, it seems as though he's a little bit last resort, if I'm being honest. But at least he does have Bundesliga experience. That's one pro point to him. He wasn't absolutely terrible with Hoffenheim, although he did definitely start the decline for the TSG. I think there's no denying that. But I mean, it's whether he can just get, you know, something out of them for the last 8 games, basically, isn't it? But he is known as a bit of a tactical tinkerer, but the squad isn't great. You know, obviously Guirassy is coming back, which is a massive bonus for the club and also for him. That he could be the joker, you know, he could be the one that comes back into form and keeps them up. But it's not looking promising for him or Hoeneß, if I'm being honest with you. Yeah.
Before we come to you, Peter, let's just do a quick round of predictions as Ballum has asked for it for tomorrow's Pokal encounter. I'll kick us off. I'll go with that predictable managerial bounce. I'll say 2-1 to the VfB boys. Over to you, Mark.
Yeah, I'm going to go for a penalty shootout win for Nuremberg. I'm confident, yeah. I just think it'd be typical of the VfB. You know, it's a great chance to get in the semis after what's been a miserable season for the club. But I think their club is going to turn up and beat them on penalties after a 1-1 draw.
Nice. Peter?
I'll go 2-1. Before I express my opinion about Sebastian Hoeneß, I'll say that he may be the beneficiary of just perfect timing. Sosa and Silas look to be fit tomorrow. I covered the presser today. Guirassy, presumably after coming off the bench, may be fit enough to start in this one. So with Guirassy back, you actually do have a lead striker who's capable of scoring goals. That being said, I think Mark hit the nail right on the head when it came to Sebastian Hoeneß's tactics. I had the great misfortune of having to deep scout Hoffenheim. I always have the great misfortune of having to deep scout Hoffenheim for the Americans in the Bundesliga column. But for the 2 years that Hoeneß was in charge, Chris Richards, the American who's now at Palace, was over there. So I had to deep scout them. I never got the sense that he had a tactical thesis behind any of his workings. And We talk about the what you guys call the managerial change, what I would call the coaching change in German terms at Bayern. Something quite similar happened at Hoffenheim at the end of the 2019-20 campaign. Alfred Schreuder, the Dutch trainer, he had them qualified for the Europa League. He was a quality trainer, and all of a sudden they saw this opportunity to get Sebastian Hoeneß, who at that time had led FC Bayern 2 to the Dritte Liga title.
Yeah.
But it was, of course, all name recognition. Sebastian Hoeneß, as many German football, even the casual observers will know, is Uli Hoeneß's nephew, Dieter Hoeneß's son. This is a scion of a footballing family, and I think he's gone a little bit too far in name recognition. What he did with Hoffenheim was exceptionally poor, as Mark correctly pointed out. This was an Europa League side that he twice led to, and one that's bankrolled quite well with a quality players and a quality roster, and he led them to 2 mid-table finishes. Well, we'll see. With Guirassy back, everything is possible. And this relegation race, this historic relegation race, is still. I mean, there's so many exciting twists and turns left in it until the end of the season. It was a couple of weeks ago that we were doing our 4 teams tied at the foot talk, and it's there's a little bit of separation now, but pretty much actually with Köln now joining the relegation race. I mean, you can definitely even Augsburg could potentially. On a points basis, totally doubt it. But I think Köln, Bochum, Hoffenheim, Hertha, Schalke, Stuttgart. You got a 6-team relegation race, and lots of fun 6-pointers ahead. So we shall see.
Yeah, not to mention the managerial swap around between Hoffenheim and Stuttgart.
That's a wonderful little game of coaching musical chairs, and Hoffenheim and Stuttgart are set to meet on the last match day of the season. That's consider how much how crazy it was at Stuttgart on the last day of the season last year with the dramatic late goal, Wataru Endo holding up the captain's armband, the pitch invasion, all of that wonderful stuff. Let's see what happens at this season's final match day. It should be even more amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So many twists and turns to come, but thought it was important for us to talk about that to get us going, and we have spent a bit of time on that, so we'll have to try and keep to time with the rest of the show. So actually, we shall go on to talk about what has happened in the Bundesliga weekend just gone, chronologically speaking, and of course, in regards to what was dubbed as the big game of the weekend. We shall start with Julie, which was the Klassiker. Bayern versus Dortmund, 4-2 to Bayern after what was a controlled display, a 30-minute onslaught, a match of uncharacteristic Gregor Kobel mistakes and anything and everything else in between, which obviously led to this comfortable victory in the end for Bayern. Had many Bundesliga fan kind of hanging their head, I guess, in disappointment as to what had been billed as a really big game, and it was over after the third goal went in on 23 minutes or something around that figure, maybe slightly later. And Thomas Muller, again, he who doubteth shall repent afterwards, because he is unavoidable. Fantastic display, some important goals for him and involvements in the goals themselves. So, gents, what can you say about the mistake from Gregor Kobel? Probably Dortmund's best player since he's been at the club, arguably for me. And, from a Stuttgart point of view, because he came from us previously to Dortmund, love seeing him do so well. But I think some people say that the first goal was quite unlucky, but I just can't see it. Like, he just comes out and misses the ball. And I think he has to do better with the third goal, where he pushes it out not far away enough. Top level football, I'm sorry, but you've got to be critical. So I think that's a mistake, which leads obviously to Muller tapping in from close range. So again, I'll throw it out to Peter first this time, and then we'll go over to you, Mark. So Peter, thoughts, feelings? Am I being too harsh on firstly my former goalkeeper?
Not at all. That was the German media described it as a perfect egg for the Easter basket in terms of Bayern. And Kobel, in his post-match interview, also didn't take responsibility for the third goal. He said, "Wow, Thomas Müller, he's here, he's there, he's everywhere. Not my fault. I spilled the rebound directly in front of him." Kobel, of course, returning from injury, so he had some rust to shake off, and he had problems with that earlier in the season as well. It's unfortunate that we didn't have a lot of football to talk about. Just an absolutely dominant performance by Bayern. As Marco Reus commented in his post-match interview, I mean, they got shredded on the counter. This was, these rolling Bayern counterattacks. The problem with Dortmund was tactically, I believe, that two experiments that had hitherto worked very well, Rafael Guerreiro in midfield and Julian Ryerson over at left back, had sort of outlived their purposes. Both players had a very, very poor game. And that's how Bayern were able to unleash these waves of rolling counterattacks. They were in a basic 4-2-3-1. They were playing off the ball. They were a little bit tentative. But Guerreiro, Ryerson, they couldn't get the cycles working up the left. They kept turning the ball over, and then came these counterattacks. And before you know it, it was all over, like a flash fire. I mean, that's what happened. So, yeah, I mean, I would still tip Dortmund to beat Leipzig in the Pokal match tomorrow because of Leipzig's form.
Yep.
I wouldn't be too worried. Everything remains possible for Dortmund. They can still chase the title. They can still win the Pokal. Those are my thoughts.
I think Bellingham came out quite quickly afterwards as well, kind of referring to the gap that they'd already made up in a short space of time, and say, hey, look, we're still only 2 points away, as you can see on screen, with eight games to go. It is still completely doable, and as you say, Peter, still got a great shot in the cup, etc. Mark, again, anything else to pick up from the game that you thought? Do you think just maybe the Dortmund mentality from some stretch has come back to haunt them again?
Yeah, if I'm being honest with you, having watched the game, I think the only disappointment for Bayern is that they didn't win 5 or 6-0, in truth, really, because 4-2 flattered the BVB in this game. There's no question about that. I mean, obviously, the one benefit that Dortmund can take is that they did come back to half the deficit in the end. Obviously, they were 4-0 down just after half-time, and they only ended up losing 4-2. So if you look at the scoreline, you think, it's not too bad, but it was bad at the end of the day watching the game. And as Peter mentioned, they were absolutely shredded. The defence were just the likes of Schlotterbeck, who we've been praising a lot since the World Cup break, was just back to his old uselessness in this game, to be honest. He lost his man for the second goal, didn't he, on the header? And he was just getting shredded. As you mentioned, Ryerson probably had his worst game by far in a Dortmund shirt. And yeah, as you mentioned, we discussed, I think, at the time, Rory, about the mentality. I mean, you've got to question, obviously, BVB's record against Bayern Munich is utterly atrocious in the last 4 to 5 years. And they've only actually got 1 point from the last 5 seasons now against Bayern. And that was actually earlier this season, a last-minute equaliser at the Signal Iduna Park. So you can see that, is there an element to being man-beaten against the Bavarians? I don't know. I mean, for me, they actually started quite well. That's the irony. I mean, Marco Reus had the first half chance of the game from a very good pass, and which was ended up being blocked. But that mistake was just utterly... Such a good player, Kobel. I think he's the best goalkeeper in the Bundesliga. I really do. I think he's a fantastic keeper. And it's so sad for him and also for Dortmund that he makes such a howler. And it is a howler. It's an absolute howler, the goal. If that didn't happen, would it have been a different story? To be honest, I don't think so. I still think that Bayern would have won easy. Just the way the game went, the way the tactics went. As you mentioned, Guerreiro in midfield was far too lightweight. He was just getting pushed off the ball by the likes of Kimmich and Goretzka. And, Bayern were brilliant in the game. There's no question. They deserve a lot of credit. I'm not sure how much credit you can give to the new manager, obviously Tuchel, because obviously he'd only been there a week or so by the time the game started. But it was definitely an improvement on what we've seen from Bayern pretty much the whole season, really, I would say. And, they've gone back to basics tactically, back to that Hansi Flick formation. It seems to work. Thomas Müller, who a lot of Bayern fans said wasn't really being included in the way he wanted under Nagelsmann, which could have been a factor in, the kind of distastefulness of him towards Nagelsmann. But he was back to his best. 2 poachers goals from him. And yeah, it was great. Bayern Munich were brilliant. Dortmund were just woeful. And the only benefit they can really take from the game was that they did score a pretty decent second goal. That was quite a nice move which was eventually kind of scuffed in by Marlon. But that was the only good thing they did really in the whole game, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, Dortmund, they're still in a good position in the league. They're only 2 points behind. They've got to focus on winning all 8 games. If they do that, I think they'll win the title, But whether they can manage that, I don't know.
Absolutely, yeah. Looks like it's half time in the Pokal, and Bayern Freiburg 1-1. Peter still holding their own, so that's obviously good news. So we shall obviously update with any second half goals whilst we're live. I mean, fair play to Marlon. I thought he did a okay job off the bench. He looked like the only real Dortmund player who looked like he had the bit between his teeth to make a statement, and considering the fact that we have often given him grief for his performances, I thought he did okay actually. But yeah, overall, the Klassiker was not a classic. There was plenty of goals, but it was a comfortable Bayern win. Right, next game, shall we cover the team that are currently in third place and in a title race as well? Dare we say? Probably not, but we can do it from a statistical numbers point of view. Union Berlin, second half surge, seeing off my boys in the end, in which was a pretty turgid first half, shall we say. Probably suited, my boys at the time. Obviously, Stuttgart had the goal, a goal chalked off for Pereira for a handball, which was unfortunately quite clear cut. So not any arguments in that sense. Went running through to block a shot from the keeper Grill, standing keeper, and went on to score, but clearly was given up as a handball in the end. And then the second half, once Geraldo Becker had broken his duck, got himself an all-important goal at the back stick, lovely drifted in cross, and Becker reached really well. Actually, I thought it was a more difficult finish than people maybe appreciate on the volley to make it 1-0. After that, the away side's heads were firmly down. Second and third goal preceded each other very quickly. Both as messy as each other. I mean, Haraguchi, obviously the former Union man, pretty unlucky. Obviously, he's working hard to track back, isn't he? But unfortunately, he knows it's a dangerous cross, gets his contact on it, and it makes it 3-0 after the second goal had gone in. Stuttgart were never coming back from that anyway. So from an Union point of view, chaps, they're looking really good again, I think it's fair to say. Have got themselves unbeaten in the last 4, 2 wins on the bounce, and have made the most of the likes of Leipzig and Frankfurt and Freiburg to an element slipping up, and now they kind of have themselves presented nice and neatly back in that top 4 place. I'll go to you, Mark, first of all. Standard kind of performance from Union. They looked strong in the second half, as they often do.
Yeah, definitely. I think the DAZN kind of highlights of this game that I was watching, they mentioned it was like classic Union performance, really, in some ways, especially in the second half. I always say about Union, sorry,
choking.
Once they get that first goal, they are like a machine, literally, Union Berlin. Like from 1-0 ahead, they very, very rarely drop points, and they often go on to win 2-3-0 from that position. And they had to work hard to get 1-0 ahead, as you mentioned. I thought Stuttgart performed well. in the first half. They didn't create that much, but obviously the disallowed goal was a big talking point. When I first watched that, I thought, what was wrong with it at first? But then you could clearly see it's a handball. He almost catches it as Renner kind of kicks it into his face. But, the first goal is a really good goal. Roussillon's ball in and then Becker's finish. That's a classic Union goal for me, And once he got that goal, it was just like a different game, wasn't it? It was just complete domination from the home side. I thought, until probably the last 5 minutes when, the game was gone. Stuttgart got a couple of chances again. I thought they were really good, The last two performances have been very similar, in my opinion. They've had to work hard to open the scoring and take the lead against Frankfurt and Stuttgart. But once he did that, they were very comfortable in both games. We're starting to see some of the good things they were doing for long periods. The likes of Khedira is back on form. Roussillon, I'm such a big fan of him, really. I'm not sure why Wolfsburg let him go, to be honest with you, because, another very good assist from him. He's got quality in defence. He's a real engine, and he's got a great cross on him as well. Trimmel on the other side, he's 35, 36 now. He's still going very, very strong. That midfield was as strong as ever. And in the second half, they just kind of choked Stuttgart's kind of, as we mentioned, it's not the best midfield in the world with the likes of Endo and Haraguchi not really complementing each other as well as you might hope. But, the likes of Laiduni was very good in the second half, and Haberer deserves a mention as well. And, that man, Kevin Behrens, he's not everyone's cup of tea, but that's his 6th goal of the season now. And many of them, have been important goals. And yeah, he's turned himself to be a good striker this season. Obviously got himself a contract extension as well. As for Stuttgart, I think the only positive for them was that Wagnermann finally got a start, by the way, because, I just think it's absolutely ridiculous that he made an appearance, 2 substitute appearances for the German national team, and he wasn't even getting on Stuttgart's first 11, which is just ridiculous in my eyes. But anyway, Labadia finally gave him a start, not in his best position, by the way. He was further forward than what he normally plays, but good to see him back in the fold, and hopefully Sebastian Hoeneß will give him more game time.
Yeah, Labadia's compromise was to use both Anton and Wagnermann. Kept Anton as the right back and played Wagnermann further afield. You would say that Stuttgart played the slightly better first half, but there just seemed to be no doubt, not at the Stadion an der Alten Försterei, that they were going to be able to hold off Union in the second half. The onslaught of goals did not surprise me at all. We already talked a little bit about Stuttgart. With Sosa back, Ito can move back into central defense. With Guirassy back, Silas can operate on the right. And hopefully Wagnermann starts over Anton at right back. We'll see what Hoeneß has to offer. Zagadou missed a couple of headers this one, did he not? That just showed you, God, if they just had a little bit more quality there, Of course, they do have quality with Mavropanos, but he's been in such horrible form.
He has, yeah.
Well, we shall see. Union did not look very good in today's Pokal match. They lost to Eintracht 0-2. So Eintracht are suddenly, after, what was it, a 9-game winless run? Maybe it might be a little bit less. They're suddenly in the Pokal semifinals. And Union are... I think they finished top 4. I think I made the prediction on the first podcast I was ever on here, and then I retracted it, and then I said it again. I retracted it again, but now I
we're holding you to it this time. Yeah. I think we can probably all comfortably say that the way that the teams have been performing in that race, Union look pretty set, but. Who knows yet what twists and turns we could be afforded. Obviously, we'll come on to Freiburg in a minute, maybe cover them in lesser detail. But let's talk about Leipzig Mainz. Talk of the town at the moment are Mainz sitting in 8th place, as you can see. Lots of green on their most recent 5 games. So 3 wins in their last 5 with 2 draws. Just playing spectacularly well under Boris Svensson. And there were some superb goals in this 3-0 not hammering. Well, I mean, you can call it whatever you want, I guess. But, Leipzig had a lot of the ball. I mean, a lot of the ball. They had 70% of the ball. And yet that only translated into an XG of 0.7%. Sorry, 0.7% of 0.7 versus Mainz's, which I think was just shy of 3. And yeah, they were just creating chances at will. In the first half, they had a plentiful amount of chances to go ahead. They eventually did with Invartsen getting on the end of another close range effort from a Schalke, which was saved by Blaswich. So Invartsen's having a really good season as well, gents. Another one of those names that you just don't really kind of associate, but he just does the hard work in the right areas. It always seems to be goals that he scores from close range for me, kind of those just being in the right area. So that was putting them 1-0 up. And then, I mean, shall we talk about that second goal? The finish is just delightful. And ode to the kind of, what's the phrase? Good feet for a big man. And like we always say that about Peter Crouch, didn't we? In England, surprisingly good with his feet, even though he's really tall. And that finish, so ball was played into him on the bounce, on maybe just on the edge of the penalty area, or just about inside, and he just guides it over Blaswich on the half volley, first touch into the net. A thing of beauty, I must admit. And his impact, chaps, has been really, really important for this Mainz side, and they are looking the real deal at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I just think this Mainz 0-0 performance was one of the best of the season from any team, personally. I think it was that good. I just think this was an absolute clinic of a performance. Yeah, it was just so many great performances from Mainz. You've already mentioned Ajork, who was probably the pick of the players. I mean, he is just a brilliant player, seriously. Like, he's taken Mainz from a good, hard-working side into a side that really looked like a European-level side in the Bundesliga to me. The way he holds it up, and he brings some of those really nice players, the likes of Da Costa, who's been absolutely brilliant since coming into the side. There's just so many quality players. Barrero was brilliant in this game. Core, I just think they deserve so much credit. As you mentioned, Ajork's goal was absolutely brilliant, but he wasn't the only man who was good in this game. Core was fantastic. You've already mentioned Ingvarts, and that was his 10th league goal of the season as well, which is a really good effort from him. He's not even out of being top goal scorer yet. He's only, I think, 5 goals behind Nico Fulkrug, who's currently leading the charts. So, what an effort. He doesn't even start every game. He kind of interchanges with Onisivo as well. Obviously, a man that we're also a big fan of in the show. He didn't start in this game, but how hard that midfield works is just absolutely fantastic. And, Stach, who I mentioned before, I'm a very, very big fan of his. I would expect him to make a big move in summer, to be honest. I've heard the likes of Dortmund are looking at him potentially. I do expect him to move to a higher level. Even Core, who's been very, very good the second part of the season. I think he was also a German under-21s international as well, right? But a very impressive player. And just the overall play from they just battered them, basically. It's as simple as that. They just picked them off on the counter-attack and just outplayed them. I don't really think the home side had many chances in the whole match. I think Werner had one chance at 1-0, and that was it, really, in the whole match. There was one good save from Zentner at 1-0. Other than that, it was just all Mainz. And, yeah, I've just got to give so much credit to the away side and Bo Svensson. And we've talked a lot before about Svensson, that, Mainz is known to be a feeder club for very, very good young coaches. And to be honest, I'm 100% sure that Svensson is going to be the next one who, either goes to a big club in Germany or maybe even to the Premier League in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. We were just talking about that, I think, on the last pod. I mean, we've been singing Mainz's praises for most of the second half of the campaign, and we've been talking about Ajorque as a probably, the best transfer of the January window. And this was before he started scoring goals of his own. I mean, just in the manner that he drew coverage and allowed things to open up. Stach, as Mark mentions, is Germany U21 international, should be getting a trial with Hansi Flick before too long, before we get to the Euros next year, if he can keep his form up. Dominic Hardcore, the Frankfurt man. We talk about him endlessly. And look, we're also talking about a Mainz squad who is missing one of our favorite players to talk about, Karim Onisiwo, to injury. Vartson has stepped in to the breach seamlessly. They haven't missed a beat. Also, Johnny Burkhardt has not been fit for the entire season. So a lot of exciting things about Mainz. Leipzig were torrid. I saw that Balam mentioned that could Julian Nagelsmann be going back to Leipzig. I never thought of that, but that actually sounds like probably a good career move for him, because Marco Rose is. I covered his presser today. I mean, he called everybody in for an emergency summit meeting on Sunday night. He's really trying to pump some passion into the side. In so doing, he's kind of lambasting the fans who were whistling Timo Werner earlier, and actually that was the previous Pokal match, and they just left in droves out of the Red Bull Arena, which they had a right to do. Their team quit. So if your team quits, you can get out of there and maybe start talking refund for your match. So Rosa appears like he's losing his mind slightly, and this is a very important appointment for him after Dortmund didn't go well, and now he's back in his hometown. So he needs to get this ship turned around. I don't think he does it. I think the defending DFB Pokal champs get eliminated tomorrow by a revived Dortmund side. I think Leipzig finish outside the top 4, and I'm really hoping that Mainz at least makes it to the Conference League spot, because they deserve it. They work hard. We'd love to have. And yes, I'm from Kaiserslautern, but I can deal with having a Mainz in Europe. I'd be happy to see my rivals represent Germany on the European stage as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, credit to them. They've been fantastic of late. And yeah, I tweeted actually tongue-in-cheek that Nagelsmann might go back to RB Leipzig. But as you say, Peter, maybe, yeah, might not be a bad shout. So yeah, we'll watch that with interest. Maybe not going to happen immediately, and Rosa is perhaps on borrowed time. But as things stand, I would agree. I can quite happily and easily see Leipzig going out tomorrow, and the way that they're playing, I can't see them getting ahead of Union or Freiburg. Will Frankfurt now become rejuvenated after beating Union in the Pokal today and go on a bit of a better run, because they need to? We shall see. Right, what else is there to talk about? I guess there's we can talk about relegation stuff for the rest of the show, and just very quickly, the two 1-1 draws for relegation threatened sides, one of which was on Friday evening, which involved Frankfurt, as they drew 1-1 with Bochum. This was actually quite a lively 1-1 game, I thought. And Bochum, of course, just kind of tried to they defended resolutely. They tried to hit Frankfurt on the break and use, obviously, set pieces, namely, obviously, the long throw-in from Antti Ajay was a particular threat, which led to the first goal from Asano in the first half, getting on the end of a rebounded effort, which Trapp saved in the first instance. Asano was on the ball, and Kolo Muani took things into his own hands, won himself a penalty and dispatched it duly, and that was after 22 minutes. So we had all our goals after the first 22 minutes, which, if you were watching it, you'd be very shocked to think, because there were chances after that. I think also Rafa Borre had a header cleared off the line by Staphylides, as obviously Bochum were kind of penned under for most of the game. I don't think you can say that Frankfurt didn't deserve to win this match, but at the same time, the effort that Bochum went to, I think a draw was certainly credit to them. They had their chances late on in the match as well. An effort by Stoiger, I think it was, they hit the crossbar from a free kick. But same old really for Frankfurt in terms of the Bundesliga. Obviously, I've not personally seen their performance today in the Pokal, but other than Kolo Muani, and of course they created chances at home to Bochum, but just looked a little bit lost because they just can't seem to get this this much needed result at the moment, Mark. And well, massive and important point for Bolcom. They can just keep on accumulating points. They'll be absolutely safe as houses.
Yeah, I mean, just to start on Bolcom, they deserve a lot of credit, really a lot of credit, because I think 3 weeks ago they looked not quite doomed, but it looked pretty stark for them, pretty bleak, really. And to come back with 7 points from the last 3 games, including 2 away games too, is superb. And, this proved just how far they've come in that 3 weeks. Not many teams from the bottom half come away from Frankfurt undefeated, and Bolcom did that. And they didn't just play a super defensive game; they created chances, and that's reflected in their obviously the XG, which was over 2 goals as well, which is really impressive from an away game without a penalty as well. Their XG was 2.01 goals, which wasn't quite as high as Frankfurt's, which was around about 2.7. But as you say, it could have been a lot more goals. It could easily have been a 2-2 or a 3-2 this game. As for Frankfurt, yeah, I think they've just got too many players off form. I mean, I also didn't see the game today, which was a lot more promising. A very, very easy 2-0 win against a solid Union side who admittedly don't travel as well as the home form. But in this particular game, I was disappointed with them. Goetze hasn't been the same player since the Rückrunde started. He was absolutely amazing in the Hinrunde. I mean, obviously that got him that famous call up to the Mannschaft as well.
He got 2 assists today. He bagged a brace.
Did he? Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I'm happy to see him back. But yeah, in this particular game, he didn't play that well. Rafa Borre, I think we mentioned, me and Peter both agreed that we're happy to see him in the same team as Mouani. He's hassling and harrying, but he's just not getting enough goals. That's the problem. He missed a few chances in this one and probably should have had enough quality to get a winner. But, I still rate him as a player. I'm a big fan of Rafa Borre in general. And, maybe with a few more starts, he can start to get a few more goals. But yeah, as for the game, I mean, I think it was a deserved point in the end for Bolcom, just with how well they played. And they should stay up now for me. If you just flash down to the bottom half of the table. But yeah, I think they're a good 4 or 5 points clear of that Rackers now. And they've got enough winnable home games to get another 5-6 points, which should see them safe in my eyes.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was quite critical of Frankfurt in my column, but all of that got rendered moot today by the performance that they did put in. So, I mean, this is a team that, look, it's getting broken up at the end of the season. Sao is leaving, Ndika is leaving, Kamada is leaving, Mouani wants to leave. Everybody, is leaving. Glasner probably will leave as well. But Krosha is ahead of the game and signing some new transfers. He's also learned today going to promote, I think, a very, very competent executive to be his partner at the sporting director position. So we'll see. They can have a little bit of a revival. Borre, it was a shame to see him have an off night on Friday night. But the man was jet lagged. Did you not see that fantastic goal he scored in Osaka? The Colombian national team's friendly against Japan.
I didn't see that one.
Oh, yeah, that's worth a look. You got to look that up. Yeah, I'm also a huge Rafa Borre fan. I mean, hey, go ahead, Mouani, go. Bring Rafa Borre back. Let him be the lead striker. He could still, if then he gets what he wants and then he hangs around. We'd love to have him in German football for a few more years.
Yeah, well, Europa League hero, wasn't he? So quite, well, fans or anyone that follows Bundesliga can quite easily forget that, can't they? But yeah, also not tagging onto it, but I do genuinely like Rafa Borre as a player. Also, then a 1-1 draw for Hertha with Freiburg. I didn't see much of this one, so I'd have to refer to you two gents on the state of play for Hertha. I mean, encouraging for them at the very least, because every point is vital, but naturally speaking, it's those big W's that get you out of trouble.
Fortunately, there was Jonathan Schmid came on for his debut appearance of the season after getting sent down to third or fourth on the depth chart there because of his battle with long COVID. He got COVID before he could get vaccinated, and he made a defensive error. That's what allowed Hertha to equalize. He tried to redeem himself, and Freiburg could have taken all 3 points. Yeah, I mean, with Hertha, it's interesting. Kevin Prince Boateng started. behind Wilfried Kanga and Dodi Lukebakio. And look, I can tell that this guy is playing the last games of his career. This is not the Kevin Prince Boateng. I mean, he's, it's like watching the Rocky fight in Rocky VI, where you're like, okay, this is a lot slower than I'm used to, but he's starting. He was starting some games at the end of the relegation battle last year. If he could help that team just with his spirit, that would be some story, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Any thoughts on Freiburg, Mark? Are we thinking they're feeling confident for top four? Obviously, they've got Leipzig breathing down their neck amongst others, but Leipzig's form is pretty dire as well. And if Freiburg can stay consistent, although having said that, they've got Bayern at the weekend, still tricky for them. They would have been no doubt frustrated not to have taken all 3 points from that particular match.
Yeah, I think you could see Christian Streich was really, he wasn't happy at all. He was pretty pissed off about the result at the end. Like you could see him like smashing his hand. He knew that was a drop, a big chance drop to pick up an extra 2 points. You can't criticize Freiburg. I mean, they've had a brilliant season. Obviously, tonight they're holding their own against Bayern. This was a very rare off day, I thought, from Freiburg. A very, very rare, especially at the Europa Park Stadion, where they've turned it into a real fortress. By the way, they very, very rarely don't win there against anyone, to be honest. And this was not their best performance. Obviously, the goal through Grifo was yet another free kick, as it always seems to be with Grifo. But they didn't create that much other than that. I thought Hertha was solid. Hertha probably felt as though they could have won the game, as is reflected by the XG. They won by over a full goal on XG. But as you mentioned, the goal was a mistake, and he couldn't really miss Nkanga, could he really? It was a very kind of easy goal, easy finish when he went one-on-one. I think both sides, Hertha will be pretty happy with a point, but they need to start winning games of football. I think we mentioned it, Rory. 5 wins out of 26 is very, very substandard for a side of their might, and they've got a very high chance of getting relegated still. But I think for Freiburg, I'm not sure. It's like 50-50 for me whether they'll get top 4. They need to play better than that, that's for sure. But most of the time they do. That's the thing with Freiburg. So a lot of it depends on whether Leipzig and also Leverkusen, they're the dark horse at the moment. Leverkusen are coming like a train from behind, absolute train. And they look probably the best side in the league at the moment, in truth. So they're going to be probably a bigger danger than potentially a Leipzig to Freiburg.
Yeah, very nice segue into our next game, actually, there, Mark, because we'll talk about that encounter as Schalke came unstuck for the first time in God knows how long, in a long while.
In the entire Rückrunde, that was their first defeat.
Crazy, really, when you think about it. But yeah, Leverkusen are, absolute flames at the moment. Florian Wirtz is a silly good footballer, just contributes all around the pitch, Diaby and co. And so, Leverkusen looking really hot. From a Schalke point of view, does that, after all the progress they've made, does it kind of just douse them down, or do they just say, you know what, we came up against a hot, flying Leverkusen side, we'll take our medicine. It was only by 3 goals, technically could have been worse, and we go again?
No, I think Schalke, they were very strong in certain areas. I mean, look, Henning Matriciani was going to have an off match. He's not superhuman. And I really liked Rice's tactics. I thought he reacted to Leverkusen well. Something we said, when we were first talking about Leverkusen's slump on one of the first pods that I appeared on, is that once Flo Wirtz gets back and gets in form, this is an entirely different team. He's can play the false 9 role in a way that Havertz never could. I think he's far superior to Havertz. He's got an amazing career in front of him.
Yep.
It was Xabi out-tactic Bayern by having Robert Andrich in the back 3 on double pivot. He moved back in the midfield. This time it was a flat back 3. No, they're a very good team. But I think, Thomas Reis, the tactician, you wouldn't think that that a guy like him is actually good at football tactics. He's more of a hard-nosed traditional blue-collar trainer, but his tactics have been quite interesting. I expect more good performances from Schalke. I think that they're still your relegation race darlings, so to speak, and Hertha can probably pull ahead too. At this point, with Hoffenheim also improving, I really, we're probably looking at Stuttgart. I'm convinced after this weekend. I'm even more convinced that Köln is heading down into the relegation race, and it's going to be rough for them. Just horrible. They can't score goals. They've been hit with a transfer ban. Stefan Baumgart is going with Davy Selke alone up top and throwing Sargis Adamayan off of the team. I mean, what's happening? Everything's melting down in the Cathedral City. Although they did play much better than Gladbach in the Rhine derby, but God, I mean that's barely saying anything. Gladbach are refuse. So yeah, Stuttgart, Köln, and probably Hertha, because he's got talented strikers that he's sort of trying to rotate in that 3-5-2 Sandro Schwarz does, but I just until Kanga and Gahnkamp start finishing regularly, I'm not going to have all that much faith in them. And Niederlechner has rightfully been benched at this point. Just forget about it.
I think that was inevitable. Yeah, absolutely. We'll just move on to Hoffenheim briefly then, and probably call it quits just after that. Mark, Sunday afternoon against Werder, they survived the late scare, particularly scary moment for Ozan Kabak, who thought he'd conceded a penalty late on, was taken out of the mud by an offside in the build-up to the penalty actually happening. So, Werder were denied the chance to equalise 2-2. They did hit the post as well late on. But Hoffenheim, as Peter alluded to, slowly improving under Pellegrino Matarazzo. I mean, as we suspected, the quality of their players should at least take them so far, and now they're starting to get a bit more kind of consistency of performance. Do we expect them to kick on now and just say goodbye to the relegation race, or is it still going to be a tricky few weeks and months for them ahead?
Yeah, I mean, I did actually fancy them to go to Bremen and win, because I think Bremen are looking like a slap-bang mid-table side that have, I'm not going to quite say given up the ghost, but they're not looking even close to what they were in the better parts of the season. The last few games, they've just been, I wouldn't quite say AWOL, but they're just looking like a mid-table side, which is disappointing, because I've been really impressed with what they've done, particularly up front in the attack for long periods of this season. But for pretty much 70 minutes, they were pretty poor in this game, and Hoffenheim took advantage. I thought the second goal was a really nice move, which Baumgartner incredibly scored a header, didn't he? Which is not particularly common. But, they look very, very comfortable at that stage. It almost looked like a Hoffenheim side from days gone by, like a fast team with some good quality coming in from the wide flanks, But then the way they finished the game made me think that they're not out of the relegation zone. Let's just say that much. I mean, they should have been cleaning that game up a lot easier than they did in the end. The first goal was scrappy from Amos Pieper. They should have been able to do better to defend that, just from a long free kick, kind of hoofed in, and he ended up getting on the end of that. I think it was his first kick of the match, pretty much off the bench as well. And then that last few minutes, I mean, I know Hoffenheim don't have many fans, but the few fans that they do have must have been pretty nervous in that extra time, because first of all, Philip hits the post like ridiculously unlucky. Really, the keeper Baumann was beaten. He was already ready to pick the ball out the back of his net, and it somehow hit the post and went the right side, to go out wide, which was really unlucky for Werder. And then, the penalty, it was one of those handballs, wasn't it? I mean, I don't like those handballs when players kick it, but nowadays in the Bundesliga, they do tend to get given, but extremely lucky. It turned out the the winger for Bremen was offside in the build-up immediately before, so they got away with it. And you could see from the celebrations from Hoffenheim at the end, they were celebrating like they won the league or the cup, because they knew they were the better team. They deserved to win the game, but the way they finished was not good enough, really, from a side of their experience in the Bundesliga, you know. But on the positive side from Hoffenheim, you know, the likes of Baumgartner is getting involved in games more. He's been a lot better the last couple of games. Kramaric is back on the score sheet, you know, which is massive for them. You know, he is their talisman. That's 3 goals in 2 games for him now, and he's starting to look more like the man of old. They've got Schalke, they've got Hertha at home next, actually, and then is it Schalke at home? No, sorry, Schalke at home. My mistake. This weekend, if they win that, I would say they're 75% safe. Let's say that much. But if they lose it, they're only probably like 45% safe. So this is a massive game. If they can win that game, especially if they win it comfortably, I'd be pretty confident in saying that Hoffenheim is safe. But if they lose it, then they're going to be in big trouble.
Absolutely agreed. Right, well, I think that's probably a fairly safe place to finish. We've gone through a lot this evening, as there's been a lot to chat about. It still looks like it is 1-1 currently in the Pokal between Bayern and Freiburg. What, just over an hour gone in that one, Peter? Who's looking more likely?
Well, if the second half has been a little bit flat thus far. Bayern missed a couple of good scoring opportunities on the rush there, just unpolished passes on breakaways. But Kimmich, of course, doing his best to drive and get those counterattacks rolling again. If anybody's in the States, it's actually on U.S. broadcast television. Don't need to sign up for the streaming service. You can watch Derek Rae and Lutz Pfannenstiel on the call on ESPN2. That is
Smashing
amazing.
Stuff. There we go. Well, ESPN can thank us for that shout out at some point, no doubt. Right, lovely stuff. I'll gladly hand over to Mark then, and we can close up tonight's show.
Definitely. So yeah, if you enjoyed what you saw tonight, then check out our Twitter feed, which is @OverTheBarFB and @OverTheBarExtra, and also our main site, which is otbfootball.net. Also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on the stuff. Yeah, don't forget to comment as well, because we like to kind of give our feedback as well on what you think about our comments. Thanks a lot to the guys in the chat as well. And we will see you again on Thursday for the fantasy football preview. So see you then, guys.
Cheers all.